Fraser, how are we?
Wonderful, how are you?
I'm good, thanks mate, I'm good, thanks. So we've sat across a table talking crap loads of times before, but it normally involves a pint, so this feels a wee bit different, doesn't it?
10:30 in the morning, sober.
I was going to say, the last time I spoke to you at this time in the morning, I think we were coming home from somewhere.
Probably. Nah, probably. Yeah, full of fear and regret.
Excellent. So I always like to introduce the guests so people have a feeling of what we're going to talk about. So husband and father, first and foremost.
Yeah.
I don't want to get in the wrong side of Claire. She's a formidable woman. Feisty woman. Owner of, was it
Glentower Tax Store and Stables, yeah.
Okay, how long have you had that now?
Ironically, it is 18 years tomorrow.
18 years.
Tomorrow, 11th of November 2005. Got the keys for it.
That's amazing. We'll touch on that.
Yeah.
After that, managing director of Dixons of Forest Motor Group, selling roughly 2,500 cars a year, £50 million turnover. You're launching new brands underneath that, from Cars R to another couple that we're going to talk about. And I guess the last one is frustrated rock star or singer or...
Yeah, that's kind of my guilty pleasure a wee bit, isn't it? I think when you spend a lifetime admiring everybody that does that kind of thing and then realise you can hold a tune and pull an audience together. So I went from being a wedding singer for 10 years to still do it. I've still got a band. We're called Close Enough. And that's because when we learn a song, it's not quite right, it's close enough.
It's close enough.
And we get out on stage and still play, yeah.
So one of the reasons I was keen to get you on the podcast, I met you when I was about probably 16, 17, and most of us at that time were quite happy working part-time in shops, trying to get enough money to go out at the weekend, but you're already hard at it. You were already wheeling and dealing, you're out selling, you're out taking risks, and you've maintained that the whole time I've known you. So you've always kept going, which is fairly impressive. And even at a young age, you had a very simplistic view in life when it came to selling and building businesses. A lot of people try and make it massively complicated, whereas you've always had the skill to say, well, actually, it's not that complicated. If you do these things right and do them enough, you'll probably get a wee bit of success. So hopefully that comes through when we're chatting. But one of the things I never actually thought about you at school, because when I met you in a three-piece suit, kidding on, you had a lot more money than you actually did.
So perceptions everything.
The only 17-year-old in a three-piece suit. So I take it school wasn't for you then?
No. I think the curriculum in any school, and even today, it's not really changed much, unfortunately, and I'd love to be a bit of an ambassador of change for that if it's at all possible. The curriculum sticks to really historic values that if any of us today really sit down and have to work out the area of a circle ever, but yet we were thundered thundered into believing that if we failed it, we were a failure forever. So my mum and dad put Barry and I to a really good school in Bearsden, and for the best of reasons, for the best education. But it was quite a strict education. I don't mean that it wasn't a private school or a boarding school or anything like that, but it was certainly very pro-academic. So if you were going to fail their classes, you were going to fail your prelims, you're going to fail the exams, the school didn't want to know you. And naturally everybody was to go into university. And the school trained people or taught people or educated people for further education. So there was lots of teachers come out of that school, lots of educators and lawyers and people in the professional services, which is handy now knowing them. So it's handy that the friends you grew up with are now lawyers and accountants and stuff like that. So we get to tap into that. But no, I had a real difficulty grasping the importance of it at the time, and it is important because these people are in these occupations now. I didn't find it at all entertaining. There was nothing that could grasp my attention span long enough in any of these classes for me to be. So I found, obviously, my home man's in the motor trade and always had been, and found that environment more exciting. And my mum was a teacher, so it was almost ironic that.
The yin and the yang.
Yes, and mum worked really hard, did 100 hours a week when Barry and I were growing up, and he's 73 and still hard at it, albeit working from home, still in the motor trade. So I realised very quickly, if you weren't academic, then the only way you would get ahead was to do double the hours anybody else was willing to do, because they might be able to get that interview off the back of academic qualifications. I didn't have any. So the only way I was really going to get ahead was to double up the hours and turn up earlier and leave later and dress smarter and listen more and read more. So I was determined. Say again?
And blag?
Yeah, I absolutely lied my way through the first 10 years of my career. There's no question about that.
Didn't we all?
Absolutely, yeah.
So into the motor trade, what age were you?
I started in December 1997. So what does that take me to? I was 17-ish. Yeah. 17.
Was that Arnold Clark?
No, I actually started in a company called SDM Toyota in Falkirk, which is still there, privately owned Toyota dealer, with some of the craziest owner-operators. Some of them are still in it, that I've ever been introduced to in my life. My man wouldn't get me a start because he wanted me to stick in academic and go to uni like Barry and stuff, and it wasn't for me. But no, I joined in there at 17 as a trainee car salesman and failed at it like you wouldn't believe.
Really?
Oh, smashed cars, made mistakes, forgot to take deposits. you name it, Daddy, I've done it. Spent 18 months trying not to get fired. It was really what I did.
Do you remember that when you get a green person in through the door now?
I've got the biggest heart on the planet, I think, and I think everyone deserves a chance. I'm much slower nowadays at recruiting, so I don't hire fast anymore, because you hire fast to fill a gap and regret it later. So I take my time hiring.
You almost know when you're hiring it's a mistake.
You do,
it's
absolutely.
like a panic buy, isn't it? I need a bum in a seat. You'll do. And
it's almost because you're still you've either had to create the vacancy for whatever reason, or the vacancy's been created because whatever's happened in that person's life, or you've expanded or whatever. But to try and I'm still very pro in hiring people well plates, because I want everyone deserves a chance to learn like I did. But I pay a lot more money now and just get the right people. And it makes life easier, which isn't necessarily the right thing. But I've got a lot of apprentices coming through as well. You can imagine, I've got a workforce of 82, 83 people, and I've got some people that will retire in 5-6 years' time. So I've got apprentices coming through to replace them in all different disciplines of the business. But I think Square Deal Motors, SDM Toyota, was an education, like an absolute education. So Barry used to call me a car, not a car salesman, because it was a year before I'd sold it. And I used to get teased for it, and swanned about my 3-piece suit, my 3/4 line jacket, my shiny shoes, my fancy fake watch, and my company demonstrator, but actually wasn't very good at it.
Because you always had nice cars.
Yeah, I've always had cars. Ironically, I'm not that interested in cars. It sounds funny. I've been in watching my whole life. I like old cars, I like classic cars, motorbikes, that type of thing. But modern cars and modern technology and all the buttons don't actually do much for me.
So how did you go from being a useless salesperson to running branches? Because you were very, very young the first time that you ended up.
And got a site to run. I've had this kind of advantage, and it maybe will continue to be an advantage, I don't know. I always looked older than I was. So I remember hearing a while ago that I was the youngest sales manager, general manager that was ever appointed in the Arnold Clark organisation. But I don't think they did it off the back of let's hire this really talented young guy. They probably thought I was 45 because I actually looked a lot older than I was, acted a lot older than I was, dressed a lot older than I was. But no, I'd left Square Deal Motors and went through another couple of small privately owned sites within a kind of 2.5-year period of time, 3-year period of time. By the time I was 19, 20, I joined the Arnold Clark Group in the very famous McHarg's, which was in Castlebank Street in Glasgow. It was owned by Arnold Clark, still is, a new fancier set of establishments. But this was...
I bought a Nissan 200 SX from that very one.
From that site? From me?
No, it wasn't from you. And then the engine seized 2 years later.
Well, the site wasn't all about that. It was the site was an Austin Rover site, a Rover site, and Rover, of course, for a lot of people nowadays don't think a Rover's a Range Rover. It was far from that. It was Rover Metros and Rover 200s and stuff. But it was the first ever motor store that had ever been invented in Scotland, and it sat with like easy 700-800 cars. But I was one of 35 car salesmen there. And I joined thinking at a scale of 1 to 10 I was a solid 8, and realised very quickly I was a 2. These guys were a different kettle of fish, and some of them, not all of them, but some of them actually took the time and were keen to show you, and some of these guys I keep in touch with now. Some are older, some are dead, it was a long time ago, 20 odd years ago. And
quite a brutal environment, that, I must
there was people fired every day, and
it's commission only as well, isn't it?
Just about back more or less it was £100 a week, more or less basic salary and a car. And the £100 a week was nothing to do with your basic salary, or whatever it was. Maybe it turned on, I think they put it up at one point to £125 a week. It was just to make you turn up. It was so that you turned up for the meetings in the morning. But it was all commission led. But the money was one thing. The money was just to keep score, and you wanted to make sure that you were getting better. Bear in mind as well that I had nothing else. So I didn't have a fallback position. I didn't have a trade. I didn't have I'll go back to college or uni. I'd failed pretty much everything. But a driving licence, and the DVLA and the police have been trying to take it off me now for 23 and a half years, maybe longer. But it was a fight, Danny, in the early days in Square Deal Motors, the Square Deal, and then right through into McHarg's. But a guy called Scott Willis is the sales director, and Arnold Clark retired a handful of years ago, he gave me a chance to run a branch, and I certainly never regret it. I hope he doesn't regret it. He gave me a chance to run the branch, and then I went from there, and I've run lots of them.
Because running some of these Arnold Clark branches at 2021 or something like that, they're actually substantial businesses by their own right.
These individual sites back then were turning over £4 million a year maybe, and things were cheaper then than they are today, so that played a lot of it. But I didn't really have an understanding of how workshops worked and how parts departments worked.
Because you're not selling motors at that point, are you?
You're actually into run a business, and down to basic principles of how do you motivate staff and how do you restock once you've sold something, and in every part of the business, and somebody phoned in sight for the fourth time, how do you deal with it? When the training really back then was you get handed the alarm code for the premises, and you
didn't have your HR on board.
No, there was nobody you could phone other than whoever put you in the role in the first place for some help. But at that time, Mr. Clark and Scott Willis had, I don't know, 70 sites to run. I was just a kid that went in full of enthusiasm, probably caused them more problems than good to begin with, but you learn, and I'm grateful for them giving me the opportunity, because without it, where would we be today?
You've always spoke highly of your time in Arnold Clark anytime it comes up.
It's funny because some
of the ones you don't speak so highly about.
Absolutely. They were good to me, and I think I worked really hard for them. And maybe, hopefully, they remember the same thing, because Mr. Clark's dead now and Scott Willis is retired. They were the two people that I worked for. But no, they were really good. I don't know why they took a liking to me, but they took a liking to me. And if they'd asked me to go up in the middle of the night and paint their house, I would have just said what colour. I was absolutely devoted to the cause.
So Arnold Clark, the person at that point, not he clearly, by that point, you'd already made probably hundreds of millions of pounds selling cars. Was he still hands-on? Was he still involved in the business?
So this was back 2000, maybe 2001. The biggest site I looked after for them was in York Hill Quay, and it was a Ford site in the end, and it's now the Transport Museum. I think they knocked it down and built something on it. It's funny to drive by and think, I used to work there. But Mr. Clark used to come in every Tuesday, and at that time he lived in Killern or Balfron or wherever he stayed, and he drove round the branches as often as he could. And sometimes you would see him 2 or 3 times in one week, and other times you wouldn't see him at all. He still took the meetings. It was very much his train set. And then as he got older, of course, thankfully the infrastructure and the organisation was there to make it even bigger and better, and the machine just kept on multiplying, and it still is to this day. A lot of great lessons to be learned from the man, not only that, but the way the organisation runs. But there are others. I mean, when I came out of Arnold Clark, I had some time with Douglas Park, and I had some time with English PLC, which is Pendragon. And as much as there's nothing wrong with either of these two organisations, I'd pretty much learned everything that I could have learned from anybody at that time from the Arnold Clark group. There wasn't anything fresh to learn from these two groups, unfortunately. So I'm maybe when it's like the person that gives you your first chance, your first real chance, you just, for all the wrong they've ever done, you always just admire the good that they did for you.
Because when you left Arnold Clark, I can always remember kind of watching from afar, and you always looked a little bit lost, that you didn't want to work for somebody else. You were fed up listening to somebody else's plan. You always thought either you knew better or you thought you knew better. I'm still not quite sure what one it is today. And you always struggled with that going into these different organisations.
I've pretty much struggled with it my whole life. I mean, right through school, and if you ask for what my dad would tell you the same thing, and ask Barry. I don't struggle to do what I'm told. I struggle to do what I'm told without understanding why I'm doing it. And they might have gone to great lengths to explain to me why I should do it, but even at that, to try and get my head around it. So I've always struggled with it, and I just struck a chord, I think, with a couple of the individuals in the Arnold Clark group where I believed in them, and no matter what they told me to do, I just thought it was the right thing to do, and I did it. People I've met after that came out with all sorts of wild instructions, and one of the things you touched on when we first started talking was the simplicity of it. Mr. Clark as an individual was really good at explaining the simplicity of it, when other organisations were full of pie charts and bar graphs and projections for this and projections for that, when there was a lot of gut feel come into the motor trade back when I was carving out my career and running it. But even today, from not to diminish the roles in a motor business, but from drivers to valeters right up to my co-directors that run the company with me, occasionally there's only a handful of them that'll turn around and go, no, you're wrong.
Aye, that's right.
So, and at that, I still have to listen to them. But no, you become...
You don't want to be surrounded by yes folk either, but it's dangerous.
You don't grow that way, Danny. You don't grow, and I've done a bit of soul searching recently, wondering, do I actually know what I'm talking about, or if I just get a friendly way of convincing folk I do? But when you're a salesman and that's what you are, it doesn't matter whether you're dealing with a bank, it doesn't matter whether you're dealing with franchises, dealing with members of staff, dealing with problematic situations, or trying to get the business to the next level. You're always selling the next thing. I'm absolutely plagued with optimism. I mean, there's not a negative bone in my body, and I find it really difficult to be in negative situations. I find it difficult to listen to the news. I find it difficult for anybody to tell me we can't do it. I remember somebody telling me a long time ago that out of nothing other than absolute determination, I'll hammer the square peg into the round hole just to prove the point that can be done. When maybe if I had taken a step back, waited a wee bit longer or whatever, I would have
got a round peg.
Aye. Other than this is what I've got. This is a hand I've been dealt, and I'm going to make it work with this. So, been on hugely optimistic, and I think you've kind of got to be, unless you have another angle. I don't have another angle. I'm hugely optimistic. But I come out of retailing cars or running businesses, and the bit of the journey that was in between where I am now and there is I set up a consultancy business I had for 6 years, and took me into England, Northern Ireland, and worked away for 6 years.
That was a bit I always loved having a chat with you about, because you were going into basically predominantly failing businesses, or something wasn't right. That's why they're getting consultants in. People aren't saying this is perfect, let's get a consultant in to tell us why it's perfect. There's normally something up. So see, when you're going about all these different businesses, and regardless if it's a car garage or whatever it is, when businesses start to get in distress or stuff starts to go wrong, what's the common themes when you go in? So you open the door, you're normally looking for the first three things. Is it that manager's useless, the processes? Where do you focus?
People and process are really important. In the motor trade, I'm sure it's in all other industries. I've been in a handful of others, but predominantly it was the motor trade. I was in some high-end kitchen retailing. I was put into a law practice for a wee while. I was in some engineering firms, and anywhere there was human beings still in the process, I could improve it normally. But the 3 Ps we called it, which was of course the people, the process, and the product. So the product had to be right. It was quite hard to sell the product if it's not right. The processes that you follow, providing that they aren't onerous for everyone, for the customer especially, or for the individual.
So some businesses forget that they're actually trying to sell, don't
Absolutely, they? Yeah. I think, we found that, I'm saying it started off with me, and then we built the company up to having, there were 6 of us, and before I handed it back to the other 5 guys and went on to the company I'm in now. The brutal honesty of it shocked people. So of course you go and I remember getting into Slough, I think it was the first place I worked at. So from a Glasgow motor trade guy getting sent into, it was a chain of Vauxhall sites that were privately owned in Slough, and I remember the very first conversation on the very first day with the managing director, and he was talking about a member of staff he had that was a sales manager, and how the guy was absolutely brilliant and they would be lost without him. He did absolutely everything right. It was just like the best thing that ever happened to the company. And I said, how did he take that when you told him that? He's like, what do you mean? I said, this guy that's irreplaceable, that's the best you've got, that you couldn't have your life without him. How did he take it when you told him? Oh no, we've not told him. Yeah. Why? Why have you not told them? And then further down the same conversation, I've got this member of staff and they're absolutely hopeless and they're never in time, and you know where the answer is going, how did they take that when you told them you weren't happy with them? Or we've not told them. Aye. Why? So very, very quickly they lose focus. If to ask me, why do some businesses, they start to worry about the things that they've been told to worry about. So they start to worry about the things, the product, the manufacturers tell them to think about, the wholesalers tell them to think about, they start to worry about things the banks tell them to think about. They make the absolute overwhelming mistake and visit their accountant and take their agenda and what they should do in order to sell more products, when accounts sadly are in the past. They can only tell you what happened up to yesterday.
See, if you let banks run your business, you're screwed. You're absolutely screwed.
You need to be on side with them. And at the end of the day,
absolute necessary evil. But if you are solely focused on what bankers care about, your business will never grow. No, it's a shame. And then most of them typically are brought up to be risk adverse, and accountancy is very much the same. It's risk adverse, and without having somebody that's entrepreneurial or somebody that's willing to take a risk. Risk taking in business is risky. It sounds terrible, but you get risk takers that still want to finish at 5:30 and go home.
and that'll never work for them. If you're a risk taker and you've taken the risk, then if you're carrying the can, you better be willing to stay awake all night to follow it through. But a lot of people don't know willing to do that. They think they're a risk taker, but they're a risk taker right up until the football's on that night or their pals are going to the pub. And you'll remember how many times I never made it to the pub. So a lot of people, I missed a big chunk of the social side of my life where you guys were all up at the boat or whatever. I wasn't there, and it wasn't because I was working really hard. It was normally because I'd fucked something up on the Wednesday, and I was going to work through the night and do another 100 hours to try and turn it good. So if you're going to take a risk, then you need to be willing to ante up and chew up and see it through.
And how did you deal going into organisations? So sometimes you were brought in by a kind of owner operator, somebody who maybe ran the business for a length of time, took a step back, let other people doing it, and it's starting to slide. So you're then put into a boardroom, a meeting room with a guy who thinks he's doing a good job. Why are you here? I'm doing nothing wrong. What can you tell me? And I guess there's no point going head to head with that, is there?
No, I think, and some of my colleagues did. So of course, some of my colleagues thought the job was to go in and
give people around.
When in actual, if you didn't have them on site, you couldn't do it on your own. You know, anybody can go into any business, highlight all the failings, fall out them all, they all work out, and then you're on the boat yourself, and it's never actually going. You're not going to get anywhere. You'll sink. So you actually need them on site. It may be over a period of time that there's some replacements have to be made, or there's some selection process that people are in the wrong roles doing the wrong thing, and you have to establish that. But you've got to do that through kind of a bit of guided discovery, where they almost come up with it themselves. Business owners, if they are, especially if they've been in it a long time, if it's a fresh business owner, it's a wee bit different. The fresh business owners tend to be a wee bit more shoot from the hip. They'll try anything desperately to get it to work. People that have been in it a long time, and there's various things that have changed in the industry, or they've not kept up with what's happened in the industry, or what's happening in the market, or how consumers behave. Sometimes they need to come away from it a wee bit, and then becoming away from it, they can see it a bit more. Consultants are funny because you're the absolute plague of everybody's life, and there's a set of words that are used, and that's what's a consultant. A consultant is somebody that borrows your watch to tell you the time. But if you actually have a real desire for doing it, I did it for a couple of reasons. One, because it was my job, I get paid to do it, but never in all the time I was there. If anybody was unhappy with anything that I'd done, I would never have billed them. So I would never actually have forced an invoice on them. If they weren't happy, I wouldn't have done it. And I'd tell them that at the start, and they'd never believe you. But if we fell out one day, because sometimes I was down on a daily rate, and that day what I was telling them they didn't want to hear, I would say, well, listen, what we'll do is we'll see the day out anyway. I'll tell you everything I've got to tell you, and I'm not billing you for today. I'll give you this bit for nothing, because for it to sit in your gut and not like it and have to pay it, it's going to be really difficult for you. But you'll go home and sleep in it tonight, and tomorrow you'll phone me and I'll be back in the next day and we'll solve it. Normally we did. But I met some great friends, some great people in the consultancy business. I was put in by one of three reasons. I was either put in initially by the manufacturer because in their eyes the business was underperforming, which was difficult because...
Do they have a lot of control to manufacture?
Yeah, it depends how your business is run. Do they lend money?
Do they?
All of that. Right. I mean, your credit line could be with them. Your whole stocking process could be through the manufacturer.
So they're saying we're putting this guy in, they need to nod.
If you lose the franchise, what you left with? You're left with a portal frame building. What you actually left with? Take the
nice tiles on the floor.
It's like any shop. Take the branding off the front of it. What's it worth? So, and don't get it wrong, the manufacturer's not always right, but there's an ego that sits in all businesses, and if your ego's too big and you believe that you're bigger than the manufacturer, the manufacturer's worldwide. I mean, a lot of people think that we're going to take a company and let's call it Joe Blogs Renault and think that they're going to be getting the whole nation to follow them off the back of their name. Nobody's ever heard of them. You need to realise the fact that Renault's, whether it's good, bad or indifferent, it's a world-renowned name, and if you can actually exploit the benefits of the brand in the first place, you'll get it to work. But just as I was talking about, did you tell that member of staff that they were good or they weren't good? I would go into businesses and they had like great product positioning. It was maybe, I don't know, it could be a Vauxhall Mocha and a PCP at £229 a month. Every mum in the land's buying one of these, but they hadn't told anybody they had them. I mean, it's like, you've got 6 of these in the compound, there's one in the showroom, there's no endless supply of them coming from the factory, they're great value for money. It's quite a hot car right now. Where have you get that advertised? Oh, we haven't. Right, okay, let's start with that then. So let's look at all the different angles from your existing customer base to how the salesmen are contacting them, to how we're putting this onto social media. Are we doing some videos with it? What are we doing to get that product out there in front of the right people? And it's all about telling people and tell the salesmen what we're doing, communicate the information. Everybody thinks driving a business or owning a business is that you're hard on people. I give the perception that I'm hard on people, but I'm not. I'm not hard on people. I'm hard on the right people, but I'm not.
People struggle with honesty.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I've been occasionally called blunt in my life.
Yeah.
And people really struggle when you give someone a very, very honest piece of feedback.
Yeah.
And they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And they see it as rude, and it's not meant as rude.
No.
It's. I would rather someone was very honest.
I love the saying, and that is, I'm really sorry about these really honest, horrible things I'm about to say to you. Because that's pretty much what happens, isn't it? And but no, you're right. I think
it's not fair to kid somebody on as well.
It goes on for too long, and then
a slow no or a slow death's not a nice thing.
No, and it's not good for the individual either. No. You can tell, we're all just animals in the jungle. At the end of the day, you can tell if your boss doesn't like you.
Right.
You know, and you can also, your boss can tell if you don't like him and him or her, and the conversation's got to be had. It's a short life to waste 5 years of it, 10 years of it, hating your boss every night going home.
The worst ones for me is when you actually really like the person, and either they're lazy. I mean, you're very, very capable, but lazy, or are such a lovely person, but they've just not got it.
I think I've got a set of phrases. I've got lots of phrases. One of them, when it comes to that scenario, is you either don't know or you don't care.
Aye.
If you don't know, I'll take all day showing you. If you don't care, that's not much I can do, really. And we'll establish quite quickly. And sometimes I've asked members of staff that, do you know? I know what I'm doing, right? Well, that would mean you don't care, and I don't tend to surround myself with people that don't care. Do you think we can change that? Do you think we can change how much you care about it? Or do you just not care enough to care about it?
Which is fine.
Which is okay. But I need to stop relying on you or depending on you, because I'm depending on everybody here to get the job done. And if you don't care enough about it, let's get you into another career that you do care about. And they normally go out of that meeting going, somebody's actually been ridiculously honest with me. And we're too scared of HR. There's nothing wrong. We don't have an HR division, Danny. I'm HR, which is worrying. Which is worrying. And somebody was in, a guy from a director of a wholesale building company was in seeing me recently and asked me how many people I had in my marketing division. I'm like, that'll be me and Craig and Jim and the rest of the team that chip in. I don't have a marketing division. I'll be able to lean on some of the manufacturers, obviously, for theirs. And how many people have got my HR team? And I'm sitting thinking, oh, God, have I missed something here? I've got 80 odd members of staff. Maybe I should have HR, but no, I don't. I'm quite honest with them. You have to be. We run out of time eventually, and I always wonder sometimes. I'm lying awake all night worrying about that individual. Are they lying awake all night worrying about me?
No.
So
more often than not.
Watching the, you sit where you've had this really stern conversation with a member of staff. You're heartfelt. You're going to do everything you can for them, and they take it on board. They've got tears rolling down their face, and then you hear the following day they're telling everybody that the boss is a tosser. You think, wait a minute. So you learn quite quickly. But no, I'm blunt. I'm definitely blunt. We've got to be. What's the point of not being blunt? I think it's a Glasgow trait, Danny. When I went to work in England, it was funny. Because in certain parts of England, not all of England, I'm not generalising it, but I'd go down to work in Oxford and things, and different parts of Oxford and these sites, and they were like horrified that I'd been put in to help them. You can imagine. There's this guy that's got no hair, doesn't pronounce words properly, doesn't have a degree. What right has he got to come in? And then very quickly they're like, hold on a minute, we're selling more cars, more labour hours, more parts, we're making more money. Why is everyone happier all of a sudden? But they were still coming in late, leaving early, thinking that was the job, and sadly it's not. No.
That's the way to do it. Do you know, there must be a massive shift in how you sell in the motor trade. Everything's getting revolutionised in terms of the way the consumers act. One of the reasons why I started Ascendo Digital, because I've made every balls up under the sun when it comes to sales. Yep. I've made every single sales mistake. I'm not, unlike you, I'm not an actual salesperson. I kind of had to grow into that. I was a techie, but I went at it as a technical person does, try to solve a problem, and it's a Rubik's Cube that fights back, and you're never going to be solved. But fundamentally, my customers in Data Vita, obviously we're selling kind of high-end data centre services, but they've completely changed how they buy. they used to tolerate our sales process because it was the only way to buy something. So you'd put them in at the start and we'd go all the way through it. But now, because of social media, the information they have to hand, the choice, people working from home, they are not wanting to speak to people. They actually can totally bypass your sales process. They make their decision before they come anywhere near your business, because they all do research and watch videos, and your industry must be a nightmare for that. So it's how do you still capture somebody without putting them into a sales process? And that's just the thing I've really had to do a full pivot on, rather than saying, right, customer, this is how we're going to sell to you. No.
They're deciding. I found that some of it is an advantage and some of it is a disadvantage. Bear in mind, of course, I'm trying
to get free consultancy here, by the way.
Bear in mind, I'm the absolute optimist. So I'd never look at anything as being a negative. I look at it as being, it's just a different way. And if we can then take the different way, get ahead of the curve a little bit with it, be better than our competitors, so that we've acknowledged early that there's a different way, then we take the customer's way and make it into our way as quickly as we possibly can. So there was some huge changes in our industry that happened round about COVID, because the businesses are so heavily geared that you needed to keep selling, and people still had a desire, which was incredible. They'd been told by the government to stay at home, not go out,
and
they're buying cars online more than we'd ever seen. And at that point, most of the certainly the owner-operated franchise businesses or owner-operated independents didn't have an online process for a customer to follow. It was all, guy, come down to the showroom, mate, we'll show you the car, and that was the kind of old-fashioned motor trade process. It wasn't as crude as that, but so we spent some money, not a huge amount of money, to create some kind of customer journey. But now the customer journey happens behind the scenes, very much between all the different places they can view the products. They can virtually get involved in the product without getting involved in the actual salesperson. There are a number of things that are changing by age of people. So obviously, my eldest daughter's 16. She doesn't want to talk to a human normally. No. So they'll go into a restaurant and looking for the QR code now when we're looking for the waitress. I mean, they're looking, and I'm thinking the service is slow in here, and I was like, we've already ordered. Dad, keep up. So as that generation comes through, and they're going to revolutionise the sales process again, and even down to the product of cars. If you're going to there's an element of branding that's going to go amiss, unfortunately. And you can see that with the likes of Tesla. So Tesla's a huge brand, but up until not that long ago, it was a nothing brand. Nobody'd ever heard of them. And then go and take BMW, for instance, that is steeped in motor racing heritage that goes back to the horse and cart. But does a 16, 17-year-old care about that? Not a thing. Not interested in it. All they're interested in is how does it interact with their lifestyle.
Can I watch Netflix?
Absolutely. Can I get in with my phone, interact with it? And, will I put my social status, and are they going to like it? Am I going to enjoy driving it? And the actual driving thing, it was really important to you and I when we were 17, 18 to pass our driving test really quickly. Kids today are not in the same hurry. I've launched an agenda for that to try and change the world with that up. One person at a time. So we're putting 12 people through their driving test next year for nothing.
Oh, wow.
In the Highlands. You've got to be, to try and get this right, you've got to be 17 to 24 to qualify, and the last of the applicants come in at the end of November for nearly 1,000 applicants, and it's a lot of money now. It's going to cost about 10 grand to do it, but what do I get out of it? I get nearly 1,000 database I didn't have before. I've got the 12 people we put through. We get to follow their social media journey. So I think the way people buy cars has changed, and why they buy cars has changed. What they use their car for has changed. The government doesn't help, because for every day they put any doubt on the future of, is it electric, is it no electric, is it hybrid, is it no hybrid, when there's any doubt comes into customers' mind what to buy, they tend to just not buy.
I do nothing.
They tend to do nothing, so we then have to spend even more money trying to push our products in front of the services of customers. But yeah, we embrace the digital journey. We spend a lot of money on it. We spend a lot of money in following you about once you've been on our website. We spend a lot of money with filtering you through the process that you want to follow, but we're still there to catch you. And when you're buying a car, and predominantly a second-hand car, to actually have a shot in it and touch it and see if you like it is really important. We've gone from we would never buy clothes online because how do we know we're going to like them, to that's now the only place we're buying them. And we've gone from how could you ever buy a car online to now people buy cars online all the time. But they drive them for a wee while, and some of them I don't want to badmouth only online manufacturers or only online retailers, but some of them never lasted. There's some of them posting losses right now that are going to put them out the game very, very quickly, and that's not because the online channel's not the channel, it's just that's not the only channel. So they've set their business up that that's the only channel, that you can only buy it online, not realising that the market's not quite there yet. It may become one day, but it's not there today.
But even the amount of information, and I'm finding this as well, it was great, I guess, back in the olden days when somebody walked into your branch and you could tell them how much their trade-in was worth.
Yeah.
They now know.
It's better though.
Aye.
Because consumers used to think their car was like a fine wine, it went up in fucking value. So I've driven this
ladder.
I bought this car last year and it was always the same collection of customers. It was it was the Volvo, Volkswagen, Honda customers that bought a car and had it 2 years. They paid 12 grand for it and still wanted 14 for it because I've looked after it and put new tyres in it, and it's worth 6. So you'd be sitting with that customer in this rather fraught negotiation over their trade-in price as if we were the baddie. But now what they do is they go into any online forum, WeBuyAnyCar.com's one, tells them what it's worth. It's to within hundreds now, not thousands. So if we get into negotiations with a customer over their part exchange price, either the customer's got it wrong and put the wrong mileage in when they valued it online. We use our competitors' online part exchange valuation tools with our customers. So the customer,
give them a wee bit more.
Well, no, we'll just say to the customer,
that's what it's worth.
Look what we've been in car.
It's funny how they trust that.
Yeah.
Because it's on the internet.
Yeah.
No,
trust a car. Well, why would you trust a car salesman? Really?
Exactly.
We're the lowest of the low. But no, there was definitely. I mean, the history of the industry was if the customer didn't know what their car was worth, it gave the dealer the opportunity of nicking it. And you would think then that these motor dealers made billions out of nicking cars, but they bought it for they undersold it anyway. I mean, they would nick it off the customer and sell it to the next customer for less than it was worth, probably because they were working for some kind of fixed margin in a lot of businesses. But no, it's helped. I think a lot of the online processes have helped, have not hindered. The businesses that they have hindered are the ones that are too rigid to their own sales process and think that their own sales process, to maybe answer your free consultancy question, if you looked at your own internal processes that suited your business at the time, and they may still suit your business, but they may not necessarily suit your consumer. And if your consumer is trending down another line, you've got to very, very quickly, without procrastinating in any way, put their system with yours, still with some kind of ability to rein it in, but you've just got to join the two together. If you don't make it easy for the customer, they'll shop somewhere else. Yeah.
And what we see time and time again is customers, businesses worry about, right, I'm measured on this, it's all about EBITDA, it's about these metrics. Your customer don't
care.
No, they don't care. And if it comes across when you're trying to sell them something, that's what it is, they go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And what they can do, and the car industry is worse than ours, but the amount of research they can do before 80% of their buying decisions already made. Like, people must come into your dealerships and have watched every single online review of the model of car they're going to buy. They know all the options. They know they can get the chrome dust covers. They can go with that. So
sometimes online information can be confusing, and until you know far more about it than I would ever know, just understanding how it works. But you go and take, even nowadays, an opinion on something, if something's any good or it's not, or a review based something. So quite often the customer thinks that because that review board of that particular car's come up first in a Google search, it's right. But it just means that company's paid more to be at the top of the screen. It doesn't mean the information's right, but the actual manufacturers themselves of products, cars in particular, the information that's on their website is right, because if it's not, it's libelous. The other companies that sit outside that with opinion-based information, our customers come in confused between the two. So they come in with your manufacturer's website saying this, but this forum says X, Y and Z. So unfortunately they can do all the research under the sun and talk themselves out of buying something that was actually
it was never an issue in the first place. The Carwell guy's done well with that, because he does reviews and they're always the same. It's the same format.
Yeah, what guy's that? The
Matt guy, is it? The Matt Watson.
And
he reviews cars all the same way, and it's I've got 3 kids. It's always, can you fit 3 baby seats in the back? And he puts them in, and you can see how much stuff can you get in the boot. So what's it like to drive? What does that button do? And the format's always the same. And it's a great way of being able to compare.
Yeah, and people probably believe it.
Aye.
I think if then that's his process. If his process is robust and consistent and it's easy to follow, then I suppose that's back to the question at the beginning.
But they're still trying to sell you cars.
Of course they are. But keep the process simple.
Do you do that, the online bidding thing now? So the Carwow, for instance, I sound like I work for them, but you would go in and say, right, I want a BMW 3 Series, and it'll go to every dealer and say, what have you got? And you'll give a price and the person can buy it from that. Do you partake in that type of...
Yeah, we've been involved in Carwow, not just the business I'm in just now, the industry in general. I've been involved in other businesses before I was in Inverness. We've dipped in and out over the years. They've changed, so they've had to change.
Aye.
So Carwow had a process where it was a race to the bottom for price. So the cheapest, the guy that was willing to sell the new car, it was predominantly new cars, the guy that was going to sell the new car at the lowest price was the one that was going to win the business, because why would he not? All brand new cars are exactly the same, so it's not as if one's in better condition or lower mileage than the other. So it was a race to the bottom. But then Carwow realised that dealers were not subscribing to their services because the landscape's fairly vast. So would somebody in Inverness, for instance, that's there, why would they travel all the way down to Manchester just to save 300 quid?
Aye.
So they wouldn't. So they ended up having to regionalise. So you put your postcode in first now and regionalise, other than just a race to the bottom. So they've had to change based on consumers. They're like, hold on a minute, why did that customer showed interest initially? We've seen them, we've followed them all the way through the digital journey on our website, but they gave up. Why did they give up? And that's because the cheapest car was 600 miles away.
I'm not doing that.
And the dealer that's nearest them are not even subscribing to us. Why are they not subscribing to us? Because it's a race to the bottom, and what's the point? It's going to cost the customer that in fuel anyway. Time they get there and take a day out of their life. So I can't. All these platforms. The greatest thing about those platforms that the motor trade have learned from significantly over the years is the simplicity of it, because it's simple. It's quite easy to follow. You don't need to go into 20 different websites to see 20 different cars. You go into one website and see 20 different makes and models, which has simplified it for the consumer. Anything that simplifies the process for the consumer works.
Aye, no, absolutely. So what advice would you give folks coming to a dealership to buy a car? What should they do and what shouldn't they do?
Well, I don't know if I've ever been asked that before in my life. I've certainly given away all the secrets here. I think they should set enough time aside. We find sometimes customers they've got a morning to go and have a look round some cars. It's a pretty big purchase. You wouldn't just give yourself a morning if you were buying a house.
No.
And some cars nowadays are the price of houses. So if you're going to buy a car and spend some money, and you're going to drive that car for the next 2 years and base your life around it for the next 2 years, 3 years, give yourself some time. So if you're coming into a dealership to explore all the options, to have a proper drive in it, not making a 40, 50 grand decision after a 15-minute drive around the block. Every dealer just now, worth their salt, anybody that actually cares about having another deal out that customer in 2, 3, 4 years time. The customer says, do you mind if I take it away for a couple of hours? Nobody's going to say no. There might be some scenarios where it's not physically possible. The car might not be available for that purpose, or it might be they don't have a new demonstrator in stock to give you a longer drive. But take your time, just come in and take your time, and even down to taking your time with the salesperson. We're just doing our best. We're trying to help you, and the perception is that
they're trying to fleece you.
No, that's the perception, isn't it? But fundamentally, the customer's not going to buy a car unless they like the car, like the figures, and like the person they're dealing with. Sometimes there's exceptions, and the exception is if the product is very desirable and there isn't an awful lot of them out there, and the price of it's right, they'll put up with the salesman not being right. And vice versa. If the product, there's lots of them, you can buy one anywhere and it's just the same price as anywhere, but you really like the salesman, you'll buy it from that guy. So these systems all work exactly the same way. But take your time would be my first. Don't rush into it. When it comes down to you've got a car to trade in, then the amount of customers that bring their car down to me for me to give them all the money in the world, you should see the state of it.
Clean.
I mean, you're expecting us to, we can see through the dirt, but you don't need to service it or put a set of tyres in it. But sometimes we'll open the boot to have a look round the car and it's full of garden waste. I mean, you just think the person hasn't
it's been looked after.
It's not been looked after at all, and have a look at it and have things accessible. So if you have serviced the car every year, then we don't want you rooting through your glove box looking for the service book. Be prepared.
Leaving the seat.
Come in and go, listen, here's the service bill, this is what I've done, this is the money I've spent in the car, and I've really looked after it. So do yourself a favour and bring it to the attention of the person that's buying it. And then when it comes to it, just take your time with it. The funny thing with a car is it's made up of millions of moving parts, and there's every chance with anything you buy, whether it's this microphone in front of us or the cameras, anything you buy, there's always a chance it's going to go wrong. And if that dealer's established, they've been there a long time, there's a bit of consistency in the sales team. You ask the salesman, how long have you been here? All started last Tuesday. Then why is there such a high turnover of people in that business? If the business has got staff that have been there a long time, there's every chance that when something isn't 100% or a light comes on you're unsure about, you can phone, he'll still be there.
Aye.
And he'll help you. So these things are really important, and that's when sometimes the race to the bottom to buy the car 600 quid cheaper out the dealer in Manchester isn't the right thing to do. Take your time, make sure the dealer you're buying it from, and take some advice off the people that matter to you. So if your auntie, your uncle, your brother, your sister's been buying off that dealer and always been looked after, the chances are they'll look after you too. It's not a coincidence.
People assume that there's massive margins in the motor industry. Like you're absolutely making massive profit of each individual car. Yeah. Is that true? So
all this information's available out there, so I'm not giving away any secrets. So the absolute best operator in the UK right now of a retailer, not the manufacturer, so the best motor group is returning 3% return on turnover.
3%?
And they're the best. 3% return on turnover. So 3%. That's after everything. And
you can't make too many mistakes with that, can you?
You can't make any. You can't make any. And 3%. So you don't actually have huge margins.
Do cars go at a loss sometimes and all? Do they?
All the time.
Aye.
Yeah, all the time.
Just want to get rid of it?
Well, not even that. It could be that it's just not a desirable product. So if you're a clothes shop and you brought in a whole load of product that is going to suit people through the summer months, you either stomach putting it in boxes, sticking it up the stairs and bringing it back out with the sun shines, or you need the money back in the bank to buy the winter stock, because endless amounts of money. We've had a shift very recently where the government moved to push electric cars further down the line. It's taken the value of a second-hand electric car and slaughtered it by like 25-30%. So every used electric car that we had in stock up until last month was sold at a loss. And that's just because they're simply worth less. Will it return? Probably.
You can't wait.
But no, I can't wait. I might have £500,000 tied up in them, so I simply can't wait.
Free the cash up and go again.
And have another go. I might even go and buy another. I might replace it with another electric car. But that electric car's now at the right market value, and I've got.
You bought it at the right price.
But just free the cash up and start again, and not be scared to do it. You've got to do it. You've got to do it. You've got to turn the product. There's no point any inventory it lies about. Doesn't matter what your product is. Doesn't go up in value unless you're in the antique trade
or specialist cars. Yeah. So what's next for you, Fraser?
Well, we're just about to conclude the final part of buying the rest of the shares. So the purpose of moving to Inverness in the first place was.
So you went in there a third, didn't you?
Yeah, I bought just over 25% of the company initially, which gave me a little bit of control, and the only control 25% above gives you means that the rest of the shareholders can't just sell from under you. You've actually got a vote in a say.
But on that, there's not much, is there?
No, but you've got tag along and drag along rights where you can actually get involved in it. And I had written into the articles when I first got involved that I was offered at first. So if the family decided, or the founding family decided they were selling, written into the articles was I was offered the opportunity first. So that came around. I bought another 6 or 7% the following year. It stalled a wee bit over COVID, as you would imagine. Came out the other side of COVID. Went back to, it's an interesting scenario because up till COVID I was running the business and behaving like a managing director. I was going back down the road on a Thursday night and coming back up on a Sunday night and going for lunch and going for meetings, and the business was doing fine. And then of course we shut for 6 to 8 weeks for COVID and then opened up on a very restricted basis. I went back up the road and started doing 100 hours a week again, working every weekend again, working until 7, 8 o'clock at night again, and just took advantage of the market that was there. And I knew if I did it then my deal, but people would follow me, and everybody since COVID has worked harder than we've probably ever done in our life. But we've gone from the company turning over 24 million to 50 million in the last 3 or 4 years, absolutely doubled it, gone from 3 sites to 5, going to open a 6th into next year. So I'm going to buy the rest of the shares off of the founding family. We'll conclude that this year, so it's taken a bit of time this year to get all the ducks in line and get the funding from the banks and the support, and that's another great example. One of the banks, and I can disclose in the next couple of weeks who it is and things. I wouldn't disclose it just now, but when I was still on the phone to him at 9 o'clock at night, and the business manager from that particular bank, because he's a salesman too, he wanted the deal too, and was trying to piece the thing together. So I'll get that over the line.
So rolling the dice again.
Yeah, so here we go again. Here we go again. When's enough? So I'll take it on. My senior team, I put a young board of directors in place, and my senior team are going to start buying shares off of me for a couple of reasons. One, I don't want them to leave me. I want them to have a vested interest. I want them to get a return on the company's profits, which they do through bonuses anyway, but I want them to get it through dividends as well. And then as time goes on, I don't have that much vanity. I want them to keep buying bits off me, and that'll free me up to invest in other things. I'll never come out of the industry. The next opportunity for me will just be to buy more motor businesses in and around where I am.
Are you going to come back down?
I think I'll never bring motor businesses down here. I wouldn't do that. I don't think unless something changes.
Oversaturated.
Absolutely, and it's oversaturated with the same operators, and it's difficult. It's not. It's just a different environment. Would I open up a handful of sites in Northern Ireland? Yeah, probably. Would I go into different parts of kind of rural England? Yeah, I might. Different parts of rural Scotland are difficult.
Do you think that's a niche, that rural community?
I think if you understand the community and you're willing to serve them properly, a lot of people make the mistake in national groups thinking you can serve a rural community the same way you can a city community. You can't. And a lot of people thought I came from the city, and I would go up to Inverness and they'd be like, "How do you find it up here? Is it not a bit quiet?" And you're like, "I live on a farm." That's quiet. This is actually, there's quite a lot going on up here. So no, I wouldn't come down to the big smoke. I don't think. A lot of businesses say where the chimney pots are or where the money is, and as much as Inverness is rural, it's one of the fastest growing populations. I think nationally the population grows at 1%, Inverness is at like 3%. It's huge and it's growing. It's getting closer. Eventually Inverness and Aberdeen will be joined together at some point, I would imagine, similar to Glasgow and Edinburgh and the towns in between. So I'll buy the remaining shares in this company and grow it. I'd like to take it to 100 million turnover, and if we can do that. And my team are young. My team are in their 40s, early 40s. So
is this aiming for an exit, or? No,
I think everyone's got to. I don't want to die in the seat, Danny. If I can avoid it, if I can avoid popping my clog sitting there, if I were in a car, I would. But I'm not. I don't do holidays. I've got some things. My recreation is playing in the band normally, other than anything else. But no, I take such a huge amount of enjoyment from running my businesses and the people around about me. It's not about the cars. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking, "Oh, you must really love cars." It's just that's the commodity. But to take the volumes of money and turn it over and use the mechanism so that we have that work and the team that I have round about me and developing the people round about me, I get such a buzz out of that. To watch them, the people that I either hired or they were there when I took over 5 years ago, to where they are now and what they're earning themselves, to how much confidence they have in the last 5 years. Because as we all agree, I've never had any lack of that. So if I can teach people how to be a bit more confident in what they do, then that's what I'll continue to do. But no exit strategy.
No exit strategy. I think you'll keep going. You'll always keep going because you love to be involved and you love chasing a deal, no matter if it's a horse, a camel or a car. I don't think it'll matter to you. So Fraser, really appreciate you coming on, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
Have you enjoyed it?
Absolutely loved it.
Excellent. All right.
Thanks, Danny.
Cheers. Now.
Thank you. Bye.